The skies above Earth glimmered like liquid crystal. Orbital spires floated among the clouds, their surfaces reflecting the sun in brilliant shards of sapphire and silver. On the palace terrace of New Alexandria, Princess Rebecca Arveline stood, poised, her fiery hair cascading over the high collar of her ceremonial gown. The wind lifted strands of her hair, catching them in the sunlight so that they burned like molten copper. Her green eyes, sharp and emerald bright, scanned the horizon, taking in the distant silhouette of the interstellar delegation arriving from Nerith. The royal court buzzed with anticipation. Hollow banners flickered in the sky, projecting images of Earth's legacy and power, while drones flitted silently overhead, capturing the ceremony for those watching across the solar alliance. Rebecca's presence was magnetic. Though she was not the tallest, nor the most striking among the crowd of nobles and dignitaries, there was a rare authority in the curve of her posture, the tilt of her chin. Every movement was deliberate, every smile calculated. She was without doubt the most captivating figure in the empire, and yet, beneath the composed exterior, a storm brewed. Today she was to meet the envoy from Nerith, a world whose people had long been the subject of rumors. Graceful, cunning, and unlike any human, the council insisted that their union would be politically impossible, that any dalliance could threaten the delicate balance of power. But Rebecca had never been one to bow quietly to convention. A soft hum announced the arrival of the Nerithian delegation. A sleek silver craft descended from the orbital gate, its hull shimmering like liquid mercury. The crowd murmured in awe. From within the vessel emerged the figure that would unsettle her world. Chris Veyron stepped onto the marble terrace, tall, almost unnaturally so, with angular features that bore the subtle elegance of his alien lineage. His skin was a pale iridescent tone, catching the sunlight with a shimmer like pearl. Silver strands framed a striking face, and his eyes, an impossible shade of violet, seemed to see not the grand spectacle surrounding him, but straight into her. Their gazes met across the terrace. The world seemed to pause. Rebecca felt a pull she could not name, a gravity stronger than any she had ever encountered. Chris bowed slightly with a grace that no human could imitate, and in that instant something unspoken passed between them, a promise of defiance, a challenge to every expectation placed upon her. The court erupted in applause as the envoy was formally received, yet Rebecca's attention remained fixed on him. Whispers floated around her. The alien envoy is mesmerizing. His presence could topple alliances, but she heard none of it. She only felt the sharp, thrilling pulse of possibility, the thought that perhaps for once her heart could lead where duty forbade. As the formalities concluded, Rebecca retreated to the balcony, overlooking the city's endless spires. Chris approached under the guise of diplomatic etiquette, yet the casual elegance of his step betrayed a confidence and understanding that unsettled her. "You find this view remarkable?" he asked, his voice soft but resonant, almost musical. Rebecca tilted her head, eyes never leaving his. "Remarkable? Yes, but only as a backdrop. It is the living world that fascinates me. Those who navigate it with purpose, who choose their own path, are what truly matter." A faint smile curved his lips as if he understood her hidden defiance. "Then perhaps, Princess, we are alike in more ways than the Council would ever permit." The sun dipped lower, casting amber streaks across the metallic towers of New Alexandria. Shadows lengthened and merged with the gold and silver of the palace, and in that moment a secret promise was forged, not of crowns or alliances, but of hearts daring to defy them. Rebecca felt it stir deep within her, the certainty that no matter the cost, she would not relinquish her choice. Chris Veyron was no mere visitor from another world. He was the first spark of freedom she had ever known, and already she could sense the storms that would come, the whispered threats, the veiled opposition, the intrigue that would engulf them both. Yet in her green eyes burned the fire of someone who would not bow, and as she turned to face the envoy fully, she knew that the game had begun. The morning sun had not yet risen when Rebecca slipped through the golden halls of New Alexandria, her footsteps muted against the polished crystalline floors. The palace was alive with the hum of technology, floating drones delivering morning briefs, holographic aides flitting through corridors, and the soft whisper of security bots patrolling the perimeters. To any observer, she was the perfect princess, composed, elegant, untouchable. Yet her heart thudded with the forbidden knowledge of the night before, when Chris Veyron had lingered in her thoughts like a shimmering echo she could neither chase nor escape. The council chambers awaited. Her father, King Aldrich, had convened a meeting to address the delicate matter of Chris's presence. Political advisors, nobles, and planetary envoys crowded the room. Every eye seemed to pierce her, questioning her loyalty, her judgment, her very essence. And then there was Chris, standing near the window, observing the cityscape as though it were a simple chessboard for his own calculations. His gaze flickered to hers just for a moment, and a quiet reassurance passed between them, a spark of connection the council could never see. "Princess Rebecca," King Aldrich's voice resonated through the chamber, firm and commanding. "It has come to my attention that you have been unduly influenced by our guest from Nerith. Let me remind you, the alliances of our empire are not trifles to be toyed with. Chris Veyron's presence here is strategic, not personal. You are to comport yourself accordingly." Rebecca's pulse quickened, but her composure never faltered. She inclined her head slightly, the subtle tilt of her chin a statement of both respect and defiance. "Father, I understand the gravity of interstellar diplomacy. I also understand that alliances flourish only when hearts are not blind to reason." A murmur ran through the chamber. King Aldrich's eyes narrowed. "Reason? You speak as though affection can guide policy. I remind you, this family's legacy and the safety of our world cannot be compromised by personal indulgence." Chris stepped forward, his movement smooth, controlled, yet undeniably human in its impact. His violet eyes met hers, an unspoken plea hidden within their depths. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "Princess Rebecca and I share a bond that transcends protocol. I ask only that our intentions be judged fairly, not by fear of what might be, but by what truly is." The council gasped at his words. Some whispered anxiously about alien overreach, others nodded subtly at the rare candor of the foreign envoy. King Aldrich's jaw tightened, and for a heartbeat, Rebecca feared the conversation might end in outrage or imprisonment. Yet she refused to back down. Later, in the private gardens reserved for royalty, Rebecca found Chris amidst the luminous flora, plants genetically engineered to glow under low light, their leaves shimmering in iridescent blues and purples. The garden was a sanctuary away from political eyes, yet it felt like another world entirely. "You were incredible in the chamber," Chris murmured. His hand brushed against a holographic leaf, making it flicker. Most would have cowered under their father's gaze. You did not. Rebecca's green eyes gleamed, her lips curving into a faint, knowing smile. "Cowering has never been my style, and neither has silence. You must understand. To be with you, I will need more than courage. I will need strategy, cunning, perhaps even deception." Chris's smile mirrored hers, tinged with admiration and danger. "Then we are perfectly matched." They walked along the path, the soft glow of alien flora reflecting in Rebecca's hair. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture a silent conversation of intention and promise. Rebecca's thoughts raced. The council would not approve. Her father would never accept, and the court would do everything to separate them. Yet, with every stolen glance and whispered word, the stakes only heightened. A sudden breeze lifted strands of her crimson hair, and Chris reached instinctively to tuck them behind her ear. For a fleeting moment, time froze. Here, in this sanctuary. Between politics and the stars, they were not princess and envoy. They were two hearts daring to defy an empire. Rebecca's resolve hardened. She would not be denied, not by law, not by family, not by tradition. Every intrigue, every maneuver she had learned growing up within the palace walls would be employed to claim the only prize that mattered, her right to choose. And as the first rays of the morning sun pierced the sky, casting golden streaks across the floating spires of New Alexandria, she realized that the game had truly begun, and she intended to win it, no matter the cost. The corridors of New Alexandria stretched like veins through the heart of the palace, polished to a mirror shine and lined with hovering light panels that pulsed softly with every step. Rebecca moved through them with the ease of someone who knew every hidden corner, every servant's shortcut, every blind spot in the council's gaze. Behind the carved doors and opulent halls, whispers traveled faster than any drone could carry them. Secrets lived here, and Rebecca intended to use them. Chris had been confined to his quarters after the council's subtle warning. Though not imprisoned, the alien envoy was closely monitored, his every message scanned by artificial intelligences designed to detect unauthorized communication. But Rebecca had already devised her first plan: coded messages hidden in holographic diplomatic files, ordinary documents carrying extraordinary secrets. She had spent nights mastering the system, her red hair falling like fire over the consoles as her fingers danced across touch panels. Tonight, she would reach him. The ballroom above was deserted, echoes of a prior gala fading into shadows. She slipped past the guards' patrols, her crimson gown brushing the marble floor silently. The cool air of the upper corridors carried the faint metallic scent of machinery and ozone, a reminder that the palace was not just a home, but a fortress. In the reflection of the walls, she saw herself as both a queen and a conspirator, a duality that thrilled and terrified her. Chris awaited her in the observation deck overlooking the city. The glass dome stretched endlessly, showing the floating spires, orbital traffic, and the shimmering ribbons of energy that powered New Alexandria's defenses. His violet eyes glimmered as she entered, a smile playing on his alien lips. "I wondered if you'd come," he murmured, voice carrying an undertone of both amusement and relief. Rebecca stepped closer, her green eyes locking on his. "There's no other choice," she said. "Every councilman, every spy, every drone, they all think they control the narrative. But we will write our own." Chris reached for her hand, and for a moment they stood in silence, two hearts conspiring against the empire itself. "And if we fail," he asked softly, "then we make them regret it," she replied. Her tone was firm, unwavering. "Failure is not an option. Not when I've already chosen you." Plans took shape over the next hour. Rebecca instructed him to encode messages in a series of diplomatic reports, appearing as routine analysis while containing precise coordinates and instructions for clandestine meetings. Every detail was deliberate, from the cadence of the words to the timing of the transmissions. In the shadows, power shifted not through armies, but through intellect and courage. Yet, even as they worked, the palace seemed alive with hidden eyes. Princess Leora had begun to sense the closeness between them. In the gilded mirrors of her chambers, she studied Rebecca's every public appearance, noting the subtle brightness in her eyes, the way her voice carried a hidden confidence. Leora's own ambition, a simmering ember long nurtured by envy, flared with dangerous intent. Meanwhile, the council remained unaware, lulled by the veneer of obedience Rebecca displayed in official ceremonies. She laughed with the ministers, nodded with the ambassadors, and accepted the ceremonial duties expected of a princess. But behind every measured gesture was a plan, a secret maneuver designed to protect her heart and her future. When the hour came to part, Rebecca lingered in the observation deck, gazing at the stars above New Alexandria. Chris joined her, his hand brushing hers briefly, a silent promise sealed in touch. "We are not yet safe," he said, "but for the first time I feel that danger is ours to command, not ours to fear." Rebecca's gaze hardened, emerald eyes reflecting the city lights. "Then we move tonight. No hesitation, no compromise. The council believes they dictate my life, but they do not. They never have." And as the twin moons rose over New Alexandria, casting pale silver over the palace's spires, Rebecca realized that she had crossed the first threshold. The game of hearts and crowns had begun in earnest, and every shadowed corridor, every whispered word, every secret glance would be a weapon in the war she intended to win. The royal dining hall was a cathedral of gold and light. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting fractured rainbows across the polished marble floor. Nobles and dignitaries from across the Solar Alliance had gathered for the evening banquet, their silks and armored uniforms shimmering under the soft glow. Every seat at the long, ivory-covered tables was occupied by eyes eager to judge, to whisper, to measure loyalty. Rebecca sat at the head of the table beside her father, King Aldrich, the weight of the crown heavy on her shoulders, even as it was invisible to all but herself. Her red hair was braided intricately, a cascade of fire tamed into perfection, and her emerald green eyes glimmered with a mix of defiance and calculation. Around her, the council moved like predators, masked as courtiers, watching her every gesture. Chris Veyron had been allowed only limited access, seated several tables away, under the watchful eyes of palace guards and AI observers. His silver hair glinted faintly, his violet eyes still searching for her across the crowd. Their subtle glances were enough to ignite sparks that no audience could perceive. King Aldrich's voice cut through the hum of polite conversation. "Princess Rebecca," he began, formal and cold, "you are aware that your union with Chris Veyron is ill-advised. Our treaties, our bloodlines demand a marriage within the Earth Royal houses. You would defy centuries of tradition for this?" His words dripped with authority, but Rebecca detected the slightest tremor of uncertainty beneath his veneer. She lifted her head, her posture regal. "Father, bloodlines do not define loyalty or love. Tradition is the framework of the past, but the future is written by those brave enough to shape it." Her voice was steady, though her heart raced. Every syllable was a thread in the intricate tapestry of her plan. From across the hall, Leora's eyes narrowed. Her perfectly poised smile could not hide the undercurrent of envy and suspicion. She had begun assembling her own network of allies. Among the nobles, those who feared change and resented Rebecca's subtle charm. Leora would not stand idle, that much was clear. Rebecca excused herself under the pretense of checking on the evening's entertainment, slipping down a side corridor, lined with reflective panels. Chris awaited her in the library annex, a room of towering data slates and floating archives. "The council will not stop at warnings," he said, stepping closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "They will attempt to separate us, to manipulate, to control. You must be prepared." Rebecca's fingers brushed against the edge of the nearest archive, selecting a set of documents that would serve as their coded messages. "I am prepared," she said firmly, "but this will require more than courage. We must exploit every flaw, every underestimation they have of us. Every ally, every secret passage, every whispered word can become our weapon." Chris studied her, admiration and concern mingling in his expression. "You carry the weight of more than just your own heart. You bear the legacy of your entire line. And yet, you still choose love over obligation. That is bravery beyond measure." She smiled faintly, the fire in her hair and eyes reflected in the holographic light. "Bravery or stubbornness," she murmured. "Perhaps it is both. But I will not be a pawn, Chris. Not in my life, not in my love, not in my empire." Together they plotted subtle maneuvers, whispered misdirections, cleverly planted rumors, and coded transmissions disguised as official reports. Every message was a thread in a web of intrigue designed to shield their bond while eroding the council's control over her fate. As the night deepened, the palace settled into uneasy quiet. Yet the shadows seemed alive with unseen eyes. Leora's spies had already begun noticing the unusual movements, the late-night departures, the strange coordination between the princess and the alien envoy. The game of bloodlines and burdens was no longer theoretical. It was a battlefield. Rebecca leaned close to Chris, her emerald eyes glinting with resolve. "Every dynasty fears what it cannot control. We will show them that some choices cannot be dictated, not even by kings, not even by tradition." Chris took her hand, their fingers intertwining. "Then let them come," he whispered. "We will meet every challenge together." Above them, the twin moons of New Alexandria cast pale silver streaks across the palace walls, illuminating the first lines of their secret rebellion. And in that quiet, suspended moment, Rebecca realized that love and power were not mutually exclusive. They were weapons in the same game. The palace of New Alexandria glittered like a constellation brought to earth. Tonight, the grand ballroom had been transformed for the annual masquerade of the Seven Spires, a dazzling display of wealth, influence, and secrecy. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars, their light reflecting off floating platforms where musicians from distant systems played instruments that shimmered with soft alien luminescence. Guests arrived in elaborate costumes, their faces hidden behind intricate masks, ensuring that beneath the facade of opulence, secrets could travel unnoticed. Rebecca moved through the crowd, her crimson gown a ripple of fire amid the silver and sapphire of the ballroom. Her mask, crafted from reflective opal and delicate gold filigree, hid her face, yet allowed her piercing green eyes to shine freely. Each movement was deliberate, drawing attention without revealing intention, commanding presence without inviting suspicion. This night was hers to play, a battlefield disguised as a festival. Chris awaited in the shadow of a marble balcony, his silver hair almost glowing in the soft luminescence of the alien-hued lanterns. His costume was understated, a midnight blue tunic with silver embroidery, allowing him to blend while still emanating the quiet confidence that always set him apart. Their glances met across the ballroom, and in that instant, the masquerade became more than a spectacle. It became a game of covert strategy. Rebecca approached him under the guise of curiosity, her mask tilting in acknowledgement. "The council believes these events are merely ceremonial," she whispered, her voice carrying only to him. "They have no idea how much can be achieved in a single night, or how easily perception can be manipulated." Chris smiled faintly, a spark of admiration and intrigue in his violet eyes. "Then, tonight, we tip the scales." The plan was delicate. Rebecca had discovered through her intelligence network that several council members and noble rivals intended to intercept their communications, using the gala as a cover to unearth her secret bond with Chris. Every step required precision. Every gesture was a coded signal. As the music swelled, she moved closer to a holographic column concealing a micro-transmission device. Chris mirrored. Her actions, their motions seamless, almost rehearsed. From across the ballroom, Leora observed with barely restrained suspicion, her mask obscuring the tightening of her jaw. The princess's subtle interactions with Chris, brushes of hands, whispered glances, were enough to raise the specter of scandal. Leora's allies, strategically placed among the dancers and diplomats, began to take note, their eyes flicking him toward Rebecca, like hawks circling prey. Yet Rebecca anticipated their moves, leaving false trails of conversation and misdirected signals that ensured the council would follow shadows, not substance. When the moment came, Rebecca and Chris retreated to a balcony overlooking the city. The spires of New Alexandria shimmered like silver flames against the night sky, their lights mirrored in the iridescent canals that flowed through the orbital districts. For a heartbeat, they were free from observation, free from expectation. "I underestimated the thrill of dancing in plain sight," Rebecca said, her green eyes reflecting the city lights. "To be surrounded by eyes, yet remain unseen. It is intoxicating." Chris reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "Intoxicating and dangerous, but you've always had the courage for both." Rebecca smiled, brushing a strand of fiery hair behind her mask. "Tonight is not just about danger, Chris. Tonight is about power. Every whisper, every shadowed conversation, every misstep of our enemies, all of it belongs to us if we choose wisely." Beneath the laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the music that echoed through the marble halls, their coded messages passed unnoticed, slipping past guards and spies alike. Each secret transmission was a step closer to their shared goal: to outmaneuver the Council, protect their love, and bend the rigid traditions of the Empire to their will. As the final notes of the orchestra swelled into a crescendo, Rebecca leaned close to Chris, her lips brushing his ear. "We are not just surviving tonight, Chris. We are shaping the future, and no mask, no rule, no council can stop us." The city below shimmered like a jewel, the moon casting silver threads over the floating spires. In that luminous, secretive moment, Rebecca realized that love and strategy were no longer separate. They were intertwined, a dance of fire and shadow, and she intended to master it fully. The Palace of New Alexandria was no longer merely a place of splendor. It had become a labyrinth of suspicion, whispers, and invisible threats. Rebecca moved through its halls with the precision of a predator, each step measured, each glance calculated. The masquerade of the seven spires had revealed far more than she had intended. The Council was watching more closely. Leora's ambitions had sharpened into a weapon, and the network of loyal allies she had cultivated was both fragile and essential. In the sun-dappled morning, she convened a secret council of her own, trusted aides who owed allegiance not to the crown in name alone, but to her vision, her heart, and the possibility of a future with Chris. Hollow displays flickered with the movements of council members, detailing every meeting, every decision, every subtle signal that might betray their intentions. Rebecca's green eyes scanned the data. Taking in patterns invisible to any casual observer, Chris entered, his presence filling the room with an alien calm. Even in this tense atmosphere, his violet eyes met hers, and she felt the pull of something both forbidden and inevitable. "You are determined," he said softly. "The Council senses the change. They will act soon." "I know," Rebecca replied, brushing a fiery strand of hair behind her ear. "And we will be ready. Every move we make from here must be precise. Every whisper, every glance, every token of communication. It is a weapon." Their first challenge came swiftly. A subtle but deliberate leak in the palace's communication system, a report of Rebecca's secret meetings with Chris, was discovered by a junior aide who had been coerced or bribed by Leora. The Council's response was immediate: increased surveillance, coded messages intercepted, and restrictions on Rebecca's movements under the guise of royal protection. But Rebecca was prepared. She had already anticipated such measures, having built redundancies into their network. Micro-transmissions hidden in ceremonial reports, encrypted signals embedded in official data streams, and decoy meetings all worked in concert to keep Chris and her connection secure. Every time the Council tightened the web, she adjusted, weaving new paths, creating misdirection, and outsmarting their scrutiny at every turn. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the floating spires of New Alexandria, Rebecca and Chris met. In the palace observatory, a circular chamber of glass and metal overlooking the city. The lights of orbiting ships glimmered like distant stars, and the canals below reflected the crimson of her gown. "We cannot underestimate them," Chris said, his tone serious, though a faint smile softened his expression. "The Council will escalate if they sense a threat, and Leora will stop at nothing to remove me from your life." Rebecca's gaze hardened. "Let them try. Every obstacle only proves the necessity of what we are doing. I am not simply fighting for love, Chris. I am fighting for choice, for freedom, for the right to shape my destiny." Their hands met, fingers intertwining, and for a moment the world beyond the observatory ceased to exist. There were no guards, no drones, no council members, only the two of them, hearts synchronized in defiance and hope. Yet even in this stolen tranquility, danger lurked. Shadows flitted across the glass walls, subtle reflections hinting at motion in the corridors beyond. Leora's spies had been clever, patient, and relentless. She was learning the patterns, the rhythms of their secret meetings. The slightest slip could expose them both, shattering every carefully laid plan. Rebecca turned to Chris, her fiery hair catching the light of the moons above. "Then we take the next step. No hesitation, no mistakes. Tonight, we infiltrate the council's records, plant evidence to mislead them, and reclaim control over what they think they command. Our future begins now." Chris nodded, his violet eyes burning with determination. Together, the twin moons of New Alexandria cast silver threads across the observatory, illuminating two hearts daring to defy an empire. And as the city beneath sparkled with the illusion of peace, Rebecca realized the truth she had long known. Power was not given. It was seized, and love was worth every risk. In the shadows, Leora's eyes narrowed, a faint, dangerous smile playing across her lips. The game had only just begun, and the stakes were now higher than ever. The halls of New Alexandria seemed to pulse with anticipation. Every corridor, every marble archway, every floating light panel held the potential for discovery or betrayal. Rebecca moved through them with a grace born of practice, her crimson hair a vivid flame against the pale luminescence of the palace. Her emerald eyes, sharp and calculating, missed nothing, not a whisper, not a glance, not a flicker of movement in the corners of her vision. Tonight, the palace hosted the ceremony of alliances, a gathering of planetary dignitaries, military leaders, and representatives of the Solar Council. Publicly, Rebecca would smile, nod, and perform her role as the obedient princess and future queen. Privately, every handshake, every casual conversation, every nod would be a calculated move in her hidden game. Chris had instructed her on the Ash's latest intelligence. Several council members, alerted to the previous night's encoded messages, were preparing countermeasures. Rebecca entered the grand hall, the crowd parting like water around her. The ceremonial gowns, metallic tunics, and alien fabrics of the guests shimmered beneath the chandeliers, yet all eyes seemed drawn to her, not for her beauty alone, though it was undeniable, but for the aura of authority she radiated, a subtle command that demanded attention without force. Chris stood near the elevated dais, his presence calm but magnetic. His silver hair caught the chandelier light, his violet eyes scanning the crowd, noting allies and threats alike. When their eyes met, a flicker of understanding passed between them. The ceremony was a battlefield, and every word, gesture, and smile was a weapon. As the ceremony commenced, Rebecca began weaving her web. She engaged key dignitaries in conversation, offering insights laced with misinformation that would ripple through the council's ranks. Every subtle hint she dropped was calculated to mislead and distract, creating openings for her and Chris to act without exposure. A minor disturbance arose when an overzealous aide from Leora's faction attempted to intercept one of Chris's data slates. With a casual laugh and a slight tilt of her head, Rebecca redirected the aide's attention, praising the event's grandeur and drawing him into an innocuous conversation. By the time he realized the misdirection, the slate had been safely delivered to Chris, the data intact and the mission secure. Later, in a secluded alcove lined with transparent energy panels, Chris and Rebecca met in private. The city's lights below twinkled like stars scattered across glass, a reminder of the empire they sought to navigate and, if necessary, bend to their will. "You're taking incredible risks," Chris said softly, his fingers brushing hers, a fleeting touch that sent warmth through the chill of secrecy. "One misstep, and everything collapses. The Council, Leora, they are ruthless." Rebecca's green eyes gleamed with determination. "I am aware, but love is not safe, Chris. And neither is power. We must act boldly, or we lose everything. Tonight I plant the seeds for our control of the Council's records. By morning, their perception will be ours to shape." Chris nodded, trusting her implicitly. "Then let us move, together." They descended through hidden corridors, paths known only to the royal family and a handful of trusted aides. The palace's AI monitoring system was sophisticated, but Rebecca had exploited minor vulnerabilities, learned from years of observing patterns and routines. Every security sweep, every data scan, every drone patrol was anticipated, accounted for, and sidestepped. At the heart of the palace, the records chamber awaited, a room of suspended data slates, holographic archives, and secure transmission nodes. With practiced precision, Rebecca accessed the central console, her fingers dancing across the interface, embedding false reports, rerouting alerts, and creating subtle discrepancies that would mislead the Council into believing Chris's presence was a diplomatic formality rather than a personal alliance. Chris assisted, his alien technology interfacing seamlessly with the palace systems. For every deception Rebecca orchestrated, he ensured the transmission appeared legitimate to external monitors. Together they moved like shadows, unseen and unstoppable. As the final data points aligned, Rebecca leaned close to Chris, her lips brushing his ear. "Tonight we have shifted the balance, but this is only the beginning. Every move we make will be scrutinized. Every ally we trust must prove loyalty beyond question." Chris's violet eyes softened with admiration. "Then, we continue, no matter the cost." Outside, the twin moons of New Alexandria cast silver light across the palace spires. In that quiet glow, Rebecca realized the truth. Love and strategy were inseparable. Every heartbeat, every glance, every calculated risk was a step toward a future they dared to claim together. And somewhere in the shadows, Leora's eyes followed, her ambition coiling tighter like a serpent. She had noticed the subtle shifts, the invisible victories, and she would not rest until the princess and her alien companion were undone. The game had escalated, and the stakes had never been higher. The palace of New Alexandria hummed with quiet tension. The masquerade had ended, but its echoes lingered, whispering through corridors, reflecting in polished marble and glinting off the floating light panels. Every shadow seemed to move with intent, and Rebecca could feel the gaze of unseen eyes pressing upon her. The Council had discovered anomalies in the records, subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to raise alarms. Leora's influence had amplified the scrutiny. The princess's agents, hidden in plain sight, began probing deeper, hunting for the secret that Rebecca and Chris had meticulously concealed. Rebecca's red hair, as fiery as her determination, fell across her shoulders as she stood before the palace's central balcony overlooking the city. Emerald eyes scanned the spires below, the orbital traffic, and the glimmering energy canals. Somewhere among those lights, secrets moved as swiftly as whispers, and Rebecca intended to remain ahead of them all. Chris arrived silently, his violet eyes meeting hers across the balcony. "They've begun tracking your movements more closely," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Leora's network is tightening. She knows something has changed, and she'll act soon." Rebecca's lips curved into a determined smile. "Then we must accelerate. Waiting only gives them time to prepare, to strike. Tonight we make a move that cannot be ignored. that will shift the balance irreversibly. Their plan was audacious. Using the Council's obsession with protocol against them, Rebecca orchestrated a public display of compliance while executing a covert maneuver. She scheduled a ceremonial inspection of the palace archives, ensuring that council members would be present, their attention focused on superficial details. Meanwhile, Chris and her allies would infiltrate the inner systems, planting evidence that misrepresented the true nature of her secret communications. As the council arrived, cloaked in ceremonial attire, Rebecca's grace and composure were impeccable. Her gown shimmered like molten crimson under the chandeliers, her mask of gold filigree reflecting the polished marble and attentive eyes. She smiled at the council members, inclining her head politely, hiding the storm of strategy unfolding behind those emerald eyes. Chris positioned himself at a discreet console, fingers flying across alien technology seamlessly integrated with the palace systems. Each code he deployed was a subtle misdirection, each transmission a shadowed pathway to protect their alliance. Their silent coordination was flawless, a dance of intellect and daring that only they fully understood. Leora, however, was not so easily deceived. Hidden among the council's ranks, she observed every gesture, every subtle signal. Her patience, long cultivated, allowed her to detect irregularities, hints of the hidden partnership between the princess and the alien envoy. Yet, by the time she moved to intervene, Rebecca had already anticipated her response, creating a carefully placed false trail that sent Leora's spies chasing shadows. In the secrecy of the inner archives, Rebecca finally allowed herself a moment with Chris. The glow of holographic panels painted their faces in soft light, highlighting the intensity of her green eyes and the calm strength in his violet gaze. "Every step we take must be perfect," she whispered. "A single mistake, and all of this, everything could collapse." Chris reached for her hand, intertwining fingers with hers. "And yet you move with certainty. You inspire confidence, even in the face of danger." Rebecca leaned close, her voice barely audible. "I do not inspire confidence. I command it. And tonight we command the outcome. We show the council that they cannot control the future. Not mine, not ours." As they worked, the palace seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the twin moons cast silver threads across the spires of New Alexandria, their light reflecting in the energy canals and the city below. Shadows moved with intent in the corridors, but none could pierce the shield of strategy Rebecca had erected. Hours later, when the council adjourned, satisfied with the apparent inspection, Rebecca and Chris stepped back into the balcony chamber. The city glittered beneath them, a testament to the civilization they both protected and defied. "Tonight we have not only protected ourselves," Rebecca said, her voice calm but fierce. "We have set the stage. Leora will discover her errors, but by then it will be too late to undo what we have orchestrated." Chris nodded, admiration and love reflecting in his eyes. "The council underestimates you. They will learn, but I fear they will not learn quietly." Rebecca's smile was one of fire and defiance. "Then let them come. Every shadow, every spy, every whisper only strengthens our resolve. They will find that the heart is as formidable a weapon as any sword or system, and they will not take mine from me, not now, not ever." The twin moons rose higher, illuminating two figures standing united against the sprawling city, hearts entwined, minds aligned, and a rebellion of love and strategy quietly igniting in the very heart of the empire. The morning sunlight of New Alexandria shimmered off the spires and canals like liquid crystal, but the city's beauty masked the undercurrent of danger that pulsed through its veins. Rebecca's crimson gown fluttered behind her as she walked. Through the palace gardens, emerald eyes scanning the horizon, every footstep, every glance, every gesture was calculated. The council had learned of discrepancies, and though they didn't yet know the truth, Their suspicion was palpable. Chris met her at the edge of the rose-colored terraced gardens, his violet eyes intense beneath the hood of his cloak. "They are moving faster than we anticipated," he said softly. "Leora has mobilized agents across the palace, and several council members are preparing direct confrontation." Rebecca nodded, her mind already mapping possibilities. "Then we must strike first. Their power relies on perception. If we control what they see, we control the narrative. And tonight, we show them how easily perception can be rewritten." Inside the palace, the council convened in secret. Leora, poised like a queen among her co-conspirators, outlined a series of measures aimed at cutting off Rebecca's communications and isolating Chris. Her voice, calm and deliberate, carried an undercurrent of fury. "We cannot allow the princess to continue bending the palace systems to her will. She undermines our authority and compromises the traditions of the royal lineage." Meanwhile, Rebecca and Chris enacted their plan with precision. Using a network of trusted aides, they intercepted the council's communications, redirecting their instructions into false channels. The palace's AI systems, which were designed to monitor internal movement and data flow, had already been subtly adjusted by Rebecca, minor recalibrations that rendered all surveillance blind to their activity. Every shadowed corridor, every locked chamber, every concealed alcove became a path to freedom, a means to strike back. As twilight descended, the pair met in the Hall of Glass, a circular chamber high above the city, walls of transparent energy, panels offering a breathtaking view of the twin moons and floating spires. The light played across Rebecca's fiery hair, illuminating her determined expression, while Chris's alien features, sharp, elegant, and impossibly alluring, reflected the silver glow. "They've underestimated us again," Rebecca whispered, her voice steady but laced with excitement. "They think they are in control, but every move we make is a step ahead. Every whisper we plant, every shadow we manipulate, it all works in our favor." Chris took her hand, his touch warm and grounding. "Your courage astounds me. Even now, with the council tightening their grip, you move with clarity and foresight." Rebecca leaned close, her lips brushing his ear. "We are not merely surviving, Chris. We are rewriting the rules of the palace. And if the council believes they can stop us with fear and protocol, they will learn the cost of underestimating love." They descended into the palace's sublevels, where hidden communication hubs and control nodes lay. Rebecca's fingers danced across interfaces, rerouting power, encrypting messages, and planting false intelligence that implicated Leora's allies in minor acts of rebellion. Every piece was designed to fracture the council from within, sowing distrust, paranoia, and confusion. Hours later, the council convened again, only to find their plans unraveling. Messages contradicted themselves, security logs showed phantom intrusions, and agents reported seeing shadows in corridors that were, in fact, empty. Leora's composure faltered for the first time, her green eyes narrowing as she realized that the princess and the alien envoy were not simply reacting, they were orchestrating. Rebecca and Chris, meanwhile, watched from the observatory, hand in hand. The city below twinkled like a constellation scattered across glass and water. "Every step forward," Rebecca said softly, "reminds them that control is an illusion and that love is the most powerful strategy of all." Chris nodded, lips brushing the back of her hand. "Then we continue, together." And as the twin moons bathed New Alexandria in silver light, a silent declaration echoed through the palace. No council, no rule, no shadow could break the bond between the red-haired princess and her alien companion. They were unstoppable, not because of strength or weaponry, but because of strategy, courage, and the fire that burned between them. The palace of New Alexandria was no longer merely a symbol of grandeur, It had become a battlefield of subtle maneuvers and silent threats. By mid-morning, the Council's wrath had manifested in a series of unprecedented measures. Surveillance drones hovered closer to the palace corridors. AI monitoring systems were heightened to near perfection, and palace guards, now accompanied by covert agents loyal to Leora, patrolled every hall with meticulous precision. Rebecca moved through the palace with a calculated elegance, her crimson gown flowing like liquid fire, her green eyes scanning every movement, every flicker of shadow. Each step was deliberate, projecting calm and control, even as the tension in the air threatened to suffocate her. Chris appeared at her side, his violet eyes meeting hers with a mixture of concern and determination. "They've tightened the net," he said softly, voice low enough that no eavesdropper could hear. "Any mistake now could expose us, Rebecca. Even the smallest slip." Rebecca's lips curved into a confident smile. "Then we must act with more precision than ever. They think the princess is trapped by tradition and protocol, but they underestimate what we can achieve when the rules no longer bind us." Their first move of the day was daring. Using a hidden passage in the lower archives, they infiltrated the Council's central communication hub, a room fortified against almost every conceivable threat. Here, Rebecca and Chris worked seamlessly, embedding false directives and encrypted signals that would mislead Leora and her faction into believing that internal dissent was fracturing Rebecca's allies. The palace itself seemed to respond to their presence, corridors stretching and twisting in ways that concealed their movements. Rebecca paused for a moment, gazing out through a transparent energy panel at the city below, its spires gleaming like frozen flames, and felt a rush of exhilaration. The world outside remained unaware of the battle unfolding within the very heart of its capital. Hours later, the Council realized their position had been compromised. Leora's fury burned like a silent inferno as she attempted to rally her forces, but every move she made was countered by invisible hands. Reports conflicted, patrols crossed paths without encountering anyone, and key council members found themselves isolated by the very communications they sought to control. Rebecca and Chris, meanwhile, stole a moment of stolen intimacy atop the observatory spire. The twin moons cast silver light across the city, illuminating her fiery hair and his alien features with a serene glow. Their hands intertwined, fingers pressing together in silent reassurance, their hearts beating in synchrony despite the chaos below. "You've done the impossible," Chris whispered, brushing a fingertip across her cheek. "You've turned their strength against them, controlled the battlefield without them knowing it." Rebecca leaned close, letting her lips brush his ear. "Impossible is only a word for those who lack vision. Strategy is a weapon, and love is the fire that sharpens it." But even in this brief moment of triumph, danger lurked. Hidden among the palace's higher chambers, Leora observed their movements through subtle sensors, piecing together fragments of the truth. She was patient, calculating, and relentless, qualities that made her one of the most dangerous opponents Rebecca had ever faced. The first direct retaliation came as the sun dipped below the horizon. Security alerts flared across the palace systems, signaling unauthorized entries and unusual activity in the eastern wing. Rebecca and Chris barely had time to react, sprinting through hidden corridors and shadowed passageways, their movements synchronized like a deadly dance. In the heart of the eastern wing, they confronted the Council's elite guards, engineered humans and aliens, genetically enhanced for speed and strength. Chris's alien reflexes and Rebecca's deft precision allowed them to evade capture, incapacitating opponents with minimal confrontation. Every step they took demonstrated that strategy and agility could surpass brute force. When they finally emerged into the moonlit gardens, breathing heavily but victorious, Rebecca turned to Chris, her eyes alight with determination. "They have underestimated us at every turn," she said, voice strong and unwavering. "They think their shadows can contain us, but shadows cannot bind fire." Chris smiled, brushing his fingers through her crimson hair. "Then let them try. Together we are unstoppable." Above them, the twin moons reflected off the floating spires, casting silver streaks across the gardens. Below, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the secret war waged in its halls. And in that quiet, charged moment, Rebecca understood that every danger faced, every risk taken, only made the bond between them stronger and their victory more inevitable. The palace of New Alexandria had transformed into a labyrinth of tension. What had begun as whispers of misdirection had become an intricate web of suspicion, surveillance, and silent conflict. The council's fury, led by Leora, had reached a new height. Every hallway, every chamber, every floating balcony became a potential threat. Rebecca moved through it all with the poise of a queen and the cunning of a strategist, her crimson hair a striking banner against the pale luminescence of the palace walls. Chris appeared by her side in the dim corridors of the lower archives, his violet eyes sharp and calculating. "They are escalating," he murmured. "Leora has dispatched covert squads not just to monitor, but to neutralize anyone aiding you, including us. They will strike tonight." Rebecca's green eyes narrowed, glimmering with determination. "Then tonight we act. We turn their aggression into their undoing. Every strike they plan, every shadow they send against us, we will anticipate and counter. We will make them doubt reality itself." Their plan required audacity. Using a network of trusted aides and subtle technological manipulation, Rebecca and Chris created the illusion of retreat and vulnerability. Holographic projections of themselves appeared in multiple corridors, walking, conversing, and even gesturing, while the real pair maneuvered through hidden passages, preparing to confront Leora's forces directly. The eastern wing of the palace became the stage of their next gambit. Leora's elite guards, genetically enhanced and trained in silent assassination, swept through the corridors, only to encounter echoes of their targets. Confusion spread like wildfire. Officers reported seeing Rebecca in 2 places at once, Chris speaking commands to unseen aides and messages that contradicted themselves. Panic rippled through the council's ranks. In the observatory spire overlooking the city, Rebecca and Chris paused briefly, their hands clasped, fingers interlocked. The twin moons reflected in their eyes, casting silver light on her fiery hair and his alien features. "Every move we make now must be perfect," Rebecca whispered, her voice calm yet fiery. "One error and the council's retaliation could destroy everything." Chris pressed his forehead against hers. "And yet, you are flawless. I have never seen such clarity, even under this pressure." Rebecca smiled faintly, brushing a lock of hair from his face. "Flawless is not the goal. Survival, adaptation, and victory, those are the goals. And love is the edge that gives us both." They descended into the sub-level archives, where data conduits and communication nodes were concealed from all but the most trusted aides. Here, Rebecca planted critical false intelligence, implicating Leora's inner circle in fabricated betrayals. Every data slate, every holographic message was calibrated to fracture the council's cohesion, turning allies into enemies, creating suspicion where none had existed. Outside, the city continued in blissful ignorance, its floating spires and energy canal sparkling under the moon's glow. But inside the palace, the battle was invisible, psychological, and merciless. Leora's frustration mounted. She had expected control, obedience, and conformity. Instead, she faced unpredictability, subterfuge, and a woman who wielded authority like a weapon. As midnight approached, the first real confrontation occurred. Elite agents cornered Chris in one of the energy conduits. Using reflexes enhanced by his alien physiology, he incapacitated them silently, but not without revealing. A trail. Rebecca, anticipating this, diverted additional guards into false corridors, ensuring the conflict would appear isolated. They reunited in the hidden observatory, breathless, hearts racing. "They are learning," Chris said, voice low but urgent. "Each strike we counter teaches them how dangerous we are. Soon, they may escalate further." Rebecca's green eyes gleamed. "Then we must escalate as well. If they intend to challenge us, we will show them the price of underestimating us. Every shadow they send, we will turn into their undoing. Every whisper, every deception. They cannot escape the web we weave." In that moment, amid the silver light of twin moons and the faint hum of energy panels, Rebecca and Chris understood the truth. Love and strategy were inseparable. Every heartbeat, every glance, every calculated risk had built a force stronger than any weapon. And as they stood together, poised against the shadows, gathering in the palace, they knew the final confrontation was imminent. Leora's wrath was no longer a threat in theory. It was a storm gathering on the horizon, and Rebecca, with Chris at her side, was ready to face it head-on. The palace of New Alexandria had never felt so alive and so dangerous. Every corridor, chamber, and balcony carried the weight of expectation, tension, and hidden conflict. Tonight, the entire council had converged, determined to end Rebecca's rebellion and sever her bond with Chris once and for all. But Rebecca, crimson hair gleaming under the twin moon's light, stood undaunted, her emerald eyes blazing with resolve. Chris stepped beside her, his violet gaze scanning the hall. Every shadow, every guard, every potential threat. "This is it," he said softly. "Every move we've made has led to this. One wrong step, one miscalculation, and it could all be over." Rebecca's lips curved into a confident, fiery smile. "No step is wrong when we dictate the rules. The council believes they control the game, but they do not. Tonight, we reveal the truth. They have underestimated the strength of love, strategy, and conviction." The grand hall shimmered under energy chandeliers, reflecting the polished marble and floating spires outside. Leora waited at the far end, her posture regal, but her eyes filled with barely contained fury. The council members flanked her, weapons and surveillance devices in hand, the weight of authority and tradition pressing down like a tangible force. Rebecca stepped forward, her gown flowing like molten fire, commanding attention not with threat, but with the undeniable authority of a queen who had mastered both diplomacy and subterfuge. "Leora," she said, voice calm, measured, and resolute, "you have tried to control me, to dictate my life, and to sever the bond I have chosen. But you have failed. Not through strength, not through force, but through underestimating me." Alfambas murmurs spread through the council. Leora's lips parted in shock, the calm mask cracking just enough to reveal vulnerability. Rebecca continued, her voice rising with both challenge and clarity. "Every agent you sent, every shadow you cast, every whisper of doubt, you turned them into weapons that revealed your own weakness. Tonight, the palace witnesses what true authority looks like." Chris stepped forward, placing his hand over hers. His presence, alien yet commanding, added weight to her words, projecting a unity that no council could challenge. "We are not merely defying you," he said, voice steady and strong. "We are reshaping the future. Together." The council hesitated. For the first time, doubt flickered across their faces. Surveillance drones paused mid-flight, guards faltered, and whispers of confusion rippled through the assembled members. Rebecca had orchestrated it perfectly. Their entire structure of control had become unstable, manipulated with precision, misdirection, and subtle truths that shattered confidence. Leora's fury erupted. She lunged forward, intending to reclaim authority, but Rebecca anticipated the move. In one fluid gesture, she activated the palace's central systems, locking doors, sealing corridors, and projecting holographic duplicates of herself and Chris across the hall. Chaos erupted. Guards collided with illusions. Council members struggled to maintain order, and the once unshakable authority of Leora crumbled under the weight of her own overconfidence. In the aftermath of the storm, the grand hall lay silent, broken only by the soft hum of the palace systems. Rebecca and Chris stood at the center, hands intertwined, hearts racing yet steady. The council's defeat was not violent, it was psychological, strategic, and undeniable. Leora's shoulders slumped as she realized that her authority had been dismantled, not by brute force, but by intellect, courage, and an unbreakable bond of love. Rebecca's emerald eyes swept across the hall. The palace, the council, the traditions, they all serve the people, not the fear of a single ruler. And we will guide this world with wisdom, with strength, and with unity. Chris and I will lead not by coercion, but by example. Chris smiled, brushing a lock of fiery hair from her face. You've done what no one thought possible. You've claimed the crown not only as a queen, but as the architect of your own destiny. The twin moons rose higher, casting silver light across the palace and the city beyond. In that luminous glow, Rebecca felt the full weight of victory, the depth of love, and the thrill of a future no one else could dictate. She and Chris were more than rulers. They were a force that could reshape worlds, bend destinies, and forge a legacy that would endure for centuries. As the first light of dawn touched New Alexandria, Rebecca's emerald eyes gleamed with promise. The shadows of opposition had been vanquished, the web of intrigue unraveled, and the power of love had proven stronger than fear. Hand in hand with Chris, she stepped forward into the palace's central balcony, ready to face the world and to lead it into a new age of possibility, passion, and unyielding strength. And in that moment, the empire understood the truth. A queen who masters both strategy and heart is unstoppable, and the love that guides her can illuminate even the darkest of shadows.